Alright. Hello guys. Today we are going to make the Communist Manifesto review. The Communist Manifesto. Let's go. So, what to talk about first? Let's go start out with, what do I think of himself? And when was this book written? Like, what's the context? What's him? Well, this is written by Karl Marx in 1840, around the time of the whole revolutions. I even mentioned him a bit in my video that you can see up there. One of the sides. Anyways, so I feel like the biggest thing I would say about him is, or like my best compliment is he was able to identify the problem correctly. The thing I think he was wrong with is he was unable to find the correct solution. Communism was not the answer, and I'll tell you why. I think this book is very interesting. At first, when I read it, or like starting to read it at least, I thought it was gonna be like everything people say on the media, or what I see on YouTube. It's either gonna be seen as, like good or bad. But I thought it was kind of interesting. It gave me this really interesting perspective. Because I think, well, it feels exactly like what I see on YouTube, but it was just done in a very, very different way. People today are really stupid, I gotta be honest. They do not say it correctly. He tried to bring it as correctly as possible. He tried to make it as well made as possible, so I appreciate the effort. However, I do think he was very, very wrong. Let's start out with, I think, just my big criticisms of the book. So one, I do think he creates this type of us versus them. The bourgeoisie versus the proletarian. Which I think is really dumb. It's kind of like what Hitler did with the Jews. It's the us versus them. It's their fault for everything. Everything they do is bad. Everything we do is good and justified. It's kind of like a cult. Which I think is just really, really wrong and immoral of what Karl Marx did. And it just doesn't work out well. And because of that, well, we had this problem where the communists kind of separated themselves and became so isolated. And it feels like it's very anti-freedom of speech just because it says it like in us versus them. We need to defeat the bourgeoisie. We need to take them down. You're not really hearing them out that much. So it kind of feels like that whole us versus them, and you don't want to hear their perspective. It's creating an echo chamber, and echo chambers are heavily anti-free speech. However, I think it's worth listening to. I think we need to listen to what they have to say if you want to know about communism. I think MacArthur, the general around the 1950s, was very wrong in how he approached communism. And with the Red Scare, everyone was kind of like, no, you're communist. No. They kind of just were like ignoring the right criticisms, and they weren't actually trying to improve themselves. They kind of just said anyone who disagreed with them was communist. And then pretty soon, no one knew what communist meant. And then, well, now we have the opposite, switch around. Now, they're just called fascist because you don't agree with them. That's kind of how they act nowadays. But I think they're worth talking to, make a conversation, understand their perspective, and then have a friendly debate. You can learn a lot from them, honestly. And their kind of worldview. I think it's flawed. Certainly, but they're worth listening to. What else? Well, I heavily disagree with how he wants the lifestyle to be. So he says that, one, like, family is not really a good thing in the book. In one of the quotes, he's saying that it's okay to have free love. It should be completely legalized, which, we have that. I guess you can have the freedom to do it. I just think that it's immoral and wrong, and you probably shouldn't. If I wanted to, I'd probably say you shouldn't. I don't know if I should want it banned, because I want America to be a free country, but I also think it's very more wrong and you shouldn't. it should be highly encouraged as a very bad thing to do. Right? And yeah, prostitution should be illegal, but he's fine with it, which I think is very, very immoral and wrong of him, and I think that's not a good lifestyle to have. He also says that religion is kind of like makes you a fool. He's heavily like he doesn't talk much about that. I'll give him credit for that, but he does think stuff like Christianity is foolish, which I disagree fully. I'm a Christian. I know I'm not a fool. I do a lot of research on what I do. And, what else? Well, he was also for, two things that I kind of agree with. One, destroy the, one, take away the child abuse that happens in factories. They abuse children by making them work horrible conditions and not even pay them that good. I 100% agree. We got to, help out the children. Until you're like, I don't know, my age or older, you shouldn't be working at a factory. Like, you shouldn't be at that desperate time, which is really sad. And another thing, he said school should be like a free education. I think free education could be fine, but I do think that the government controlling all that education is a very slippery slope, and it should be proceeded with a lot of caution. I don't think he really mentioned stuff like welfare. I don't think he talked much about welfare, but I think he would be very pro-welfare. Honestly, I don't think welfare is a good thing, but I think it's not unnecessary in every circumstance. I think there's still some need of it. The people who can't work at all, I think you can have help. I think you should have help because even I feel like God might support that. He says that the strong shall help the weak. I just don't know if the government should be doing that stuff. It should be, stuff like churches and, the community around. We should all be helping our neighbors. We all gotta support each other. That's what we should be doing. But communism has a different story. It says that the government should be doing this stuff. And he also thinks that family can be a big mistake. He says it's more of a bourgeoisie type of thing and is not really for the family. I think I know why. In his past, he kind of was that kind of guy who was a big womanizer and didn't care much about his family. I think that does kind of affect your worldview. Now, not every communist is all for that stuff. There's probably a lot of families who believe in communism. But that's kind of just how he did it. He also, I feel like a big major problem for him is the worldview is just so flawed. Because, think about this whole... What if a proletarian becomes part of the bourgeoisie? I guess he came from being, this oppressed guy, really, and automatically justified in a lot of stuff. Now, he's evil just because he became really rich. It's basically saying don't become successful. And if you're part of the bourgeoisie and then become proletarian, you automatically become good. I don't think it makes sense. Back then, maybe it made more sense because in 1840, he identified the problem correctly. It was horrible situations. Everyone was in a lot of mass poverty. But that was kind of the whole world back then. Everyone had that, even non-capitalist nations. So capitalism isn't really the big problem. Because when you look at it now, today, look what capitalism gave us all. Very successful world. Yeah, we can thank, capitalism for all that type of stuff. There's other problems to it. So that I'm semi-capitalist, I can't say I'm 100% for capitalism, though. Anyways, I do think that communism has all these flaws just due to this whole us versus them, and also there's different spectrum of people. There's spectrum of someone's thoughts and ideas. There's a diversity of how people act towards each other and how they are as a person. You kind of have to look at them as a person and try not to assume them the worst for someone, or try not to assume how they are as a person, that's a very slippery slope. You shouldn't be doing that type of stuff. I'm not gonna assume every communist hates, hates capitalists and wants them gone. I'm not assuming that. I'm gonna assume that they probably do have good intentions, though. That's just kind of how I am, though. Also, I think a big problem I majorly disagree with in the Communist Manifesto was that one of his, ideas he said in a quote, you can sum up communists in one phrase: the abolition of private property. So abolishing private property, which I think is insanely flawed, because private property is the ability for anyone can own land. You can have that ability if you work hard. I think that's a good thing, and that should be an encouraged idea. Back then, it probably made a little more sense because, well, the medieval eras all the way to like pre-industrialization, it was hard for some, random guy, right, the middle class to own land. Now, almost everyone owns land, so it's completely unnecessary to abolish private property. And who's going to own it? The government? Come on, that's dumb. I don't want the government to own everything and to control who gets what. A state shouldn't have all the power. It should be, not just the people, but a share with the people and the state. It should be a talk between them. I would say that I'm probably a little more authoritarian than libertarian, but even then, I do think there should be major limits to state government. And, what else? Is there anything left? I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I thought of it. I just thought it was really interesting in some of the stuff. I disagree with a lot, but I don't think it's really that bad of a book. And he does criticize his own side sometimes, which, I think that's really fair. Like, he's he's critical when his party or people who are similar to his party will do wrong. I think that is a good thing. He won't do it all the time in the book, but he has done it sometimes. And you know what? Good for him. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about, this is the final one in the review. One of the big ones he talked about almost the most. He said that soon there would be the proletarians would rise up and there would be this whole war over the capitalists and the communists, the war of class. And then the communists would win, and the proletarians get to defeat the evil bourgeoisie pigs. What happened? Well, he said communism would happen to industrialized societies. It only happened in Russia, a nation that was not industrialized. He only referred to Germany or America or Britain, or France, industrialized countries. He wasn't referring to Russia, which was not even industrialized at the time he wrote the book. He wasn't referring to those. So it doesn't make sense. It was most of the people that became communists, like China, Vietnam, they were all agricultural. He was wrong about the industrialized societies. They stayed capitalist, which goes to show that capitalism was the one that kind of won in the end. And not only that, but the Soviet Union lost the Cold War. I think the Cold War really changed everyone's thoughts of communism, especially showing the Berlin Wall, which showed like, you know, capitalism isn't perfect, but at least you didn't need to build a wall to keep your people in. And yeah, I guess that's kind of the end of it all. And yeah, in the end of the day, I do think communism isn't 100% evil. Nothing's really 100% evil. There's always going to be some good in everything, even fascism sometimes. But regardless, it still showed a lot of evil stuff. Like the Soviet Union was a very evil nation. Maybe it did some good, but it was overall evil, just like Nazi Germany. So in the end, I don't think communism should ever be tested again. It's already caused enough death. But I would love to talk. If you disagree with me, tell me in the comments below. I'll be happy to talk with you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you soon. And yeah, peace out.